Welcome to Diary of an Unemployed Actor with me, Milo Dennison. Each week I speak with up-and-coming actors, actresses, and filmmakers about the entertainment industry. We discuss success, failure, and share a few tips to inspire those of you who have a passion for the creative arts. This week I'm speaking with Kev Bamboo. He is a photographer turned actor turned film producer, actually. So he does a bit of acting, film producing, and we get into that, of course, during this discussion. We also spend a decent amount of time discussing the immigration plight, or the plight of immigrants, I should say, more specifically, who are leaving certain countries, especially in this case, Northern Africa, and kind of what they're having to go through in order to make a new life. I will say with this particular episode, unfortunately, is another one that is impacted by the quality of the sound recording being used. Kev's in kind of an echoey room, and he had to dial in from his computer, and he was in Greece at the time, so I think we had a bit of a slow bandwidth problem as well. So unfortunately, not the best sound quality on this. I did clean it up as best as I could. But I'd probably recommend, if you can, maybe have a listen from a quiet room. That'll make it a bit more easier to hear. All right, let's get to the show. Where are you from originally?
I'm from kind of North Derbyshire, North Nottinghamshire, kind of like the North Midlands. So, but I now live in like a bit further north, near to Hull.
Okay.
So,
I get up to, into Scotland and stuff, but it's funny, anytime somebody mentions the Midlands, it's like that area I go through to get to Scotland. And I actually was on a film shoot and it's funny because I was on a film shoot a few weeks ago, and it was like North London, right? And it seemed really rural. It was like a little suburb town in North London. And they picked me up at the little train station, and I'm like, oh, sweet. So is this the Midlands? And they're like, no, this is basically just North London. And I'm like, oh, all right. So I haven't quite.
was it kind of like Watford, I think, or something maybe?
Something like that. Yeah. It wasn't like it took me, and it was probably from central London, maybe about just under an hour on the train. So to give you an idea.
Right. Okay.
But it was, so I guess it wasn't full on Midlands. It was just kind of funny.
Yeah, you might have been kind of touching the edges of it.
Getting close, I think. So and you're working on a photo project in Greece right now? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah. Well, the plan was to go out to Greece for a few days, work on a few things there, and then head over to Turkey, because from Kos Island it's like 10 miles. And my friend out there, he's got he's a drone operator.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do some drone photography. But the boats at the minute are cancelled, so it's really difficult to get over. So playing it by ear at the minute, may well get out there in the next few days. But we have to. It's a little bit odd because I might not be able to get back, so I've got to be careful about getting over it as well. So yeah, but in Greece currently, so I've decided to kind of change my plans a little bit. And I'm kind of working on interviewing people locally in Kos, talking about the immigration crisis and people that are trying to get over to Kos and then trying to get elsewhere. And I kind of wanted to make a short kind of docu-film for that, to get people's perceptions that live in the locality. So it's very easy for the UK and other countries to just say, oh wow, that going on there or whatever, but without actually getting first-hand experience, maybe from some asylum seekers as well, and also kind of people that are in restaurants, bars and things like that. So I've been focusing on that, doing a little bit of photography around that as well, and then we're patching together a short film. So it's all coming together, but I've had to adapt what I initially came out for. So but there's always a way of doing something else. So
yeah. Is this the immigration like from North Africa and stuff? Going through the Mediterranean?
Yeah, basically people that are coming from, say, North Africa, the Middle East pretty much, and then via Turkey. And because obviously Turkey is, the Greek islands are so close to the Turkish coast, obviously it's only we say it's only a short journey, but, for the people, they're not hopping on a day trip boat, they're having to go by other means, and certain people are likely convincing them that, oh yeah, you can jump on my boat and this is fine. But of course, we know it isn't. Some of these people are, very desperate. So we have to look at a lot of angles and a lot of sides of things. We have to understand the plight of some people that are, trying to get over. And I'm pretty certain, if we put ourselves in that situation, regardless of what our background is, what jobs we've had previously, how rich we were, all that's forgotten. And, we can just say, someone says, hop in a boat, you can kind of have freedom as we know it. And that may not actually, be the truth, So these people are kind of being told one thing and they're pinning everything on that one trip. And then they get there and then they realise, no, we've got to make another, 10 journeys or whatever just to get somewhere that's particularly safe or welcoming. So it's a difficult subject. I know a lot of people have lots of different opinions about it, but I really want to show kind of some other sides and first-hand accounts of it, really. So that's the plan.
So I'm curious about that too, because with people going, they're doing this, right? And then they get there, and then how are they making a living after? So they're migrating, I know, into Turkey and stuff, and then they're kind of maybe working their way up into Western Europe, and because you see all this growing nationalism in a lot of countries. Germany's have, in the UK, obviously, we just had Brexit. And I'm from the US, obviously, we see that going on there now as well. And it seems like you have this growing nationalistic attitude, anti-immigration attitude. So are they finding it, of the people you've talked to, are people finding it hard once they get there to then even just, survive once they're there?
I guess. I would say from a couple of people I've spoken to so far, they find for them it's worth the risk just to get to somewhere that is much safer than their native country. And the people that I've spoken to so far, one would rather go back if it was safe to be back in their native country, and the other guy, he said that he wanted to get over so that it was safe, so that he could then build a new life. And he's accepted that his country isn't safe anymore. And his essential plan is to go to then, once he can kind of claim some kind of residency in the long term, that he can then bring his family over slowly but surely. But it's not like, I think it's perceived to be in the Western world more as like that it will take kind of a few months, but this could take years and years, and then the guy could still get turned down for his application and is back to square one. But the main kind of the main remit of the people coming over, basically, they say it's worth that because life as they know it right now isn't worth being in their native country, as difficult as that is for them to actually turn around and say, it's that. As I say, we have to kind of put ourselves, if we were in a situation like that, turning on the other foot, we were trying to get over to, their countries, which seems unimaginable, but you have to wire that thought process that way around. If we were in that situation, would we take that risk if our country just, was being bombed on a weekly basis and wasn't safe, not only for us, the rest of our family? Would we stay, or would we go somewhere that was safer? I think that's the main question.
Yeah, it's definitely a complex issue. It's an interesting issue, especially because the world that we live in. There's so much immigration, and we're so integrated in so many different ways, and even with stuff like that, like I really sympathize with it. I saw an interview with somebody and this was in the U.S. They immigrated up from Mexico, and the attitude, kind of the same thing. It was the attitude of like, you're coming here, and the guy was like, look, I don't want to come here. I have to come here. I need to be able to take care of myself and feed my family. I'd rather stay where I was, but it's not,
for sure.
And it's interesting. And then same thing. And I know it's very similar here in the UK as it is in the US, with an attitude of like, immigrants taking jobs and that kind of stuff. And they're not taking jobs, they're doing jobs. And, And it's often jobs that most locals don't want to do, and they work harder at it.
Sure.
I saw an interview with the guy. I want to say it was like it was basically a factory in the States, and I think it was like a chicken factory or something like that mass produced chickens and farm chickens. And he was basically saying the reason why he hired so many immigrants is because they're the ones that showed up and did the job. And anytime he hired somebody from the US, they'd maybe work there a day and then never show up again. And it's a completely different attitude, because when you immigrate to a country, you have to like commit to being there and doing a good job.
Sure, and like yourself, you've come from the US to the UK, and there's no real difference in the sense you're not fleeing from war, obviously, but you've come to the UK. I assume that a certain opportunity will give you a chance to end up living over here, and you probably know certain difficulties yourself. Just integrating initially anyway, being from somewhere else. I think without this sounding a little bit funny, but it helps that you're a certain colour and that you speak, a certain type of English already. So that's massively helpful. But there are probably still many integration issues because people are different all across the world, But ultimately, I think that we all want the kind of same things. You ask the average man, woman, child, aspirations and things that they want to do. I think most people want to be safe, live a happy life, do the thing that they love doing, and just, I don't think there's any real sinister, there will always be bad people, there will always be good people, there will always be average people. But in the main, I think most people want to just get on with their life and be able to do that as freely as they possibly can. I have zero issue. I don't think there is any immigration issue, as it were, in the UK, nor in many other places, really. I think there's plenty of scope for people to be able to freely go to, this country, that country. We've only kind of created this scenario ourselves by drawing lines on maps and saying, you can't go here, you can't go there, but if you have this, you can go there, and etc. So, not us, but our governments have created a scenario where they pick and choose who goes where. And of course, yes, you may have to have certain skills, but as you've already touched on, there are certain areas where, you may have someone that was trained as a doctor in another country that goes elsewhere, and then all of a sudden that qualification is, it means nothing. And either you have to retrain and then go through another whole process of, even if you are a doctor, it was 7 years before you could be, say, a GP. Mm-hmm. So people don't look at it, they just look at those things and say, oh yeah, this guy's coming over, he's going to take my job at Tesco's. And it's like, I'm really sure that if that person could use the skills that they'd already trained, maybe they're a mechanic, maybe they're a doctor, whatever, really. We could say and go all night, but I'm sure that they would like to use their skills, equivalent to roles that are available in the UK. The fact that they end up and are willing to do a job that some might say is lesser or lower down the chain than where they're at, I think it's almost pretty honourable, because not many people would say, if I said to a doctor that's from the UK, if I said to him, okay, next week your qualifications mean nothing and you've got to go and work at Tesco, of course they're going to say, get out of town. I'm doing that. I've worked, 8-9 years of study and, internal training to get to where I am. I'm not going, not because they don't think it's any less, but they've worked to a certain level. So it's things like that we have to look at as well, in the whole as well, because these people they aren't necessarily unskilled people. So it's a very, very, very complex situation.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, let's move off of it though, because that's not the purpose of this podcast. Although I think it is. I could talk about these subjects for hours. I think I really could. I think it's a fascinating subject. But you're predominantly a photographer, but then kind of with the whole COVID shutting things down a lot, you really kind of moved in to start focusing on acting a bit more. Is that right?
Yeah, that was always there as a kind of little running thing. My photography has always been the main passion. And it's the thing that I was always interested in from a young age. But COVID kind of made it difficult as the initial outset, initial lockdowns came into place. So you couldn't really move anywhere. And of course, photographing other people and maybe doing behind the scenes shoots, all of that was out the window. So had to look at other things. And then, a lot of what they're calling kind of UGC, which is obviously user generated content, that started appearing more and more. So I was like, oh, let's have a little look at that. Let's see where that can go. And there was a few roles which I could then record and film from home. And yeah, it kind of grew a little bit from there. But just prior to COVID, I'd actually been submitted two film roles that I'd signed non-disclosures for. So I don't know if you want to ask me about that, and then we'll go into
sure.
questions.
Can you talk about it, even though you signed a non-disclosure?
Yeah, I can talk about I can talk about it now because basically that's past, and the scene that I was going to be filming was cut essentially, so they just didn't include those parts anymore. So ask the question, and I'll lead on from
that. All right. Well, first let's just start with one. What were the films, and two, what was the role that you were to play in them, and then three, I guess, were they simply just cut because of COVID? So first, films and role.
Yeah. So sure, the initial film was codenamed Vengeance, which is actually Tenet, which has just come out about a month ago. It's the Kristofer Nolan Batman kind of with an Inception kind of style. So that was due to be filmed in Liverpool over about a week or 10 days. And filming was literally to start for around about the 22nd, 23rd of March, which obviously that was right on the date when full lockdown started. So that actually got cancelled due to COVID. And then the other one, which would have been a couple of weeks later, was down in Devon, and that was Operation Mincemeat, which is was about a war film based on a spy that was washed up on the Portuguese coast. Basically, the UK government covered this up, and it was to get intelligence. That's the main bolt of that story. It was kind of like I think it was a German officer or something like that who was working as a spy, and they had to cover it up and basically fake a death to make it look like that they'd kind of claimed this intel, and to fool the Germans into thinking. I don't really know how they managed to do it, but they said it's integral to the Second World War, I think, and how things developed from there on. But essentially, I was going to be in a role within that film. So I'll go to the role in Tenet was a physical / kind of stunt role, which would have been, I think it was like a stand-in role, I suppose, where I would have covered for not necessarily one of the leads, but one of the kind of like secondary type actors. But the full detail hadn't been released at that point because obviously it was under NDA at the time, and then it was a matter of arriving in Liverpool, and then once you get there, more detail was going to be released, but it then got cancelled. So that was a physical / stunt role for Tenet, and then Operation Mincemeat was also a running role, which I think was kind of like going down on the beaches and in some of the dunes, and this was to replicate kind of like a scene where there was an attack happening with I think it was only about 40 or 50 extras, and then I don't know how they were going to shoot the rest of it. But again, all of these got cancelled purely due to COVID.
So with the Tenet one, let's focus on that. So since this is kind of a podcast for actors, like how did you find out about the role and the audition?
Yeah, so that one initially that came out through Star Now, and but I was already with an agency as well. So I'd been submitted by the agency, but I'd actually applied at the same time to Star Now. So I didn't realise that obviously the call was being fielded out, to obviously other actors and stand-ins and supporting artists, I suppose. So yeah, it came initially from Star Now.
And then was it an in-person audition or was it remote, or what was the process of getting the role?
Okay, so so the audition was initially meant to be in Liverpool, and then we got told to do self-tapes essentially. And my agency said send the self-tape to us and don't continue through Star Now. So because obviously they had a more direct link with I think with some of the producers that they were fielding from. So I did a self-tape, and that got sent to my agency, and then it was basically a matter of waiting games for that. So instead of it being an in-person audition, we had a self-tape audition, and then I can't remember what he was going to ask me next.
Okay, so you did the self-tape audition, sent that in, and then they basically just notified your agent, hey, he's in, this is the shoot dates?
Yeah, sure, yeah. So we had an idea already of a rough timescale of when the dates were going to be. But obviously, as things, because that was in March, so my self-tape went off on kind of like, let's say, the first, maybe going into the second week of March, which full lockdown obviously hadn't started at that point. And so, yeah, that was all kind of fine. Then they gave the dates of 22nd or 23rd of March to then go to Liverpool for the fitting day. And then I think the following day would have been the first shooting day. So I would have just stayed in Liverpool. It was easier for me to, be there and then just, travel to and from. So, yeah, we sent that off, and yeah, it was all good. And then literally, it kind of gets close to the day, and I'm seeing, the government kind of people are saying, oh yeah, the places should be closed down. Things are not good. Cases are going like this, and nothing was really being done. So there was like the uncertainty on my side, and I'm sure lots of conversations were being had, not just in the film industry but everywhere. It was like, how are we going to manage this? Because no one was really being given any guidance, in many sectors. So there was uncertainty on my part, because I was like, well, obviously I want to go because this is a great opportunity. But do I, at the time there was no like, the mask thing wasn't like a regular thing then. It's just, oh, we haven't actually got, any plan at all. That's how things appear to be, from my person. And yeah, so it was kind of stuck at that stage, and then as time went on, got close to the date, and I had to make a decision myself. It was like, do I go? And then, as it turned out, it was like a few days later, so probably I think the 20th, I was emailed to say, don't make any plans yet, which thankfully I've not actually arranged any kind of travel or anything like to get to Liverpool or any accommodation. So I was like, okay, I'll just hold on and play by ear. And they said, well, it may still go ahead. Are you okay to kind of travel last minute? And I said, yeah, sure, as long as that's covered, fine, no issue. And then obviously it got to, I think it was the 21st, so like a day later, but it was late in the evening, and they said, don't bother because we're thinking that they're going to cancel. So even though lockdown hadn't been announced, they were already making decisions on set. They just couldn't have, say, I don't know how many was going to be in that scene, but let's say it was a night shoot, but it was a street scene. I don't know, let's say there was 50 to 100 people. I say damage limitation wise, and they probably couldn't do the scene with, say, 10 people or 20 people. So, yeah, they just notified and said, look, it's touch and go, so we're actually just cancelled. Well, they said we're delaying. That was the initial thing. So then we get kind of, full lockdown gets applied, as it were. And then I think it was it was obviously the day gone, but because it was going to be a 10-day shoot, there was still that chance that we might be able to figure something out, and crew and cast and everything could go on set. But I think it was like the 24th or 25th possibly, and yeah, they just said no, they're actually cancelling. It may come back at a later date, but of course, film doesn't really stop. So yeah, that scene essentially got cut out. So I don't know, I may have been on for about 5 seconds or something like that in the long run, but it was, it was 10 days, as much as I do, that would have been quite a decent little, a little figure to go. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. 10 days of paid work. Yeah, 10 days of paid work on a major studio production is a great, and just the experience of being on sets like that.
Sure, and I kind of, the only thing that really got me more than anything, it wasn't about losing any pay or anything like that. It was more the fact that I know that, you do okay, and generally they like to kind of recall the same people if they've done a decent job, because it's easy to have someone that's reliable and that can just go with the same team of people and keep it. So a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. But you were the face of Grolsch beer, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was another one that I didn't really expect to be anything, particular. I don't know, maybe my beard was kind of more here at the time, and I think they were looking for a little bit more of a, I don't know what they call it, hipstery kind of look. Something like that.
Okay, so nice big full beard.
Yeah, full strong, strong beard. So that. I'm by no means a hipster or anything like that. But it was there. I'd had it. It'd been growing a good, 2 years, 2.5 years or something. So I always like to claim that I was already in that scene before it became popular or whatever. But yeah, so I had this look, and that was really just, it was like it was a social media campaign initially, and they wanted, so I think it was for 250 years of Grolsch, and basically, so out of, I don't know how many it was because obviously social media, I think Facebook and Instagram campaign. So initially there was I'm going to say 10, 15,000 people maybe applied, and so essentially just sent a selfie of you looking some kind of way. That's all I can really describe it. They just said, send us a selfie, and we'll go from there. They liked what they saw, and they only needed 250. But yeah, so one of 250 down from, I don't know, I'll say 15,000, could have been a few less, could have been 20K, I don't know, maybe. So a lot of applicants whittled down to, 250 still seems quite a lot of people, but to be selected in some way out of that amount, I'll take that as it's just something to, it's more, for me, it was a funny thing, really, because there was no expectation to kind of get that position, it was just send a selfie off. If it happens, it happens, Thankfully it did. It gave a tiny little bit of exposure, and that made, because I think that was like, I can't remember if I said to you, that was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I think. So that was before I'd actually done any kind of acting at all, or even submitted myself for any role. So I don't know whether, sometimes, obviously because your face gets banded around, I don't know if that's why one of the agencies then, I don't know, maybe correlated that and was like, oh, okay, this comes. And I put that in my notes, obviously, when I was applying for certain agencies. So it may well have helped. I don't know. But I can't say that it would have been detrimental to anything else.
Yeah, it's one of those, it might have helped, but it definitely did not hurt kind of thing.
Certainly, yeah.
So what are you working on now then? You're working on a couple short films right now, or a couple features, is that right? A couple shorts.
Yeah, a couple of shorts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one of the ones I'm working on is I'm a producer for, which is called Mr. Stare. And that is kind of like it's a film about, it's based on a factual experience. And it's about a woman that gets stalked when she's very young. And then this guy kind of like continues, even with kind of so far down the line, she doesn't even really know that he's still around. And then years later, he reappears, and there's an event that happens. Obviously, I won't reveal too much because it's in pre-production at the minute. So I think principal photography and some shooting starts around December time, I think. So we're getting close, about 8 weeks maybe. Yeah, early December.
What motivated you to be a producer? Why did you get involved as a producer on that?
So then this reverts to my own film that I'm working on. So because of COVID, again, limited opportunities. So I thought I'd always kind of written quite a bit of stuff as well anyway. So I was looking at things that I'd written down, and I was like, can I turn that into some kind of short stuff? So I was like, okay, started self-shooting a few things and did a little trailer for that. That's kind of in concept mode, really. Though we'll get further on that later on. But then, obviously, I was looking at a few things just at the milling around on Star Now. I think I applied to be an actor on it. And then something happened. There was a problem with submitting my cell tapes. And then the person said, look, I need as much help as I can. And they were like, would you like to use your previous experience? So initially I went on as being behind the scenes photographer, and then some of the other photography, especially kind of some of the pre-production stuff. So there's a scene where there's a shrine stalker has, and there's lots of photographs that he's taken over a period of time. So some of my photography is going to be what will be used for those scenes. So it's kind of like attention to detail and continuity there. And then as things and discussions went on, and I started chatting to one of the directors and the director and one of the writers for this short.
What's the name of this short? Is this Bottle?
No, Bottle is mine.
That's yours. Okay.
The short for this is Mr. Stare.
Okay.
Yeah. Which kind of is relating. It's quite generic, but it relates to this stalker that's lurking in the background. As time went on, so it just became more my input. Essentially, got valued a little more. The things that I was saying, things that I wanted to do, I offered up kind of revisions on the script, and they were fairly happy. But like all the teams, there was discussions about, oh yeah, okay, that might work. This may not work. But whenever I offered, my own input, it was valued, and so we went from there really. And I kind of suggested it's probably better if I'm an actual producer rather than just a behind the scenes photographer. Because
that's a nice way to get involved in something, though, because often you kind of show up and do your thing and then go home. But if you want to be involved in filmmaking, to kind of take the initiative and be like, how can I help out in other ways? And I like the fact that once they actually did start, bringing you into the project more, that you weren't afraid to be like, okay, well, if I'm going to behave in a producer type of a role, then, make me a producer kind of a thing. So it's kind of a nice way to do that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I feel you have to kind of push a little bit, but there was never really that feeling of me kind of going, made me into it. Maybe, it was more just, it was almost organic, really. It came about just that, like I say, discussions continued, and we just got to the stage where it made sense to put me into that position. And because obviously, like a lot of things, there's no real budget, so to speak. There's a limited budget, and they've been really appreciative. I think there's one thing I've just recently, because they were having difficulties with their music production, the guys that they got in for that just ended up not replying. So I said, look, I know a couple of people, leave it with me. I'll contact a few people. So for Mr. Stare and for Bottle, actually, we've just secured an artist to record a couple of original tracks. Sorry, I'll say that again. A couple of original tracks for for both of those movies. So we've got a guy, really great youngish artist, called Scott Makepeace-Nunn. So I'm giving him a little bit of a plug because, of course, everyone's finding things difficult, even, not just getting noticed, but also music is probably one of the great things where, you can do a lot of it online as well. You don't need to be, you don't need to be present. You could submit your file and send it up, but it's still a difficult time. So, Scott Makepeace-Nunn is...
Sorry, say his name again?
His name is Scott Makepeace-Nunn. Makepeace-Nunn.
Makepeace-Nunn.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Okay. All right. Is that one word? Is that one?
It's hyphenated, so it's like double barrel or whatever. So it's Makepeace hyphen Nunn. But I know his sister from my time at secondary school or high school, and I didn't really know Scott much. He went to the same school, but it was like, I think 2, maybe 3 years apart. So when you're younger, of course, that always seems like a massive jump. But as you get older, of course, I've seen Scott. He's been producing various bits and bobs, and I was really impressed with the variance of his style. Because he writes quite a few what some people would call like far out, kind of like almost psychedelic stuff, but also he writes like a lot of kind of like indie, melancholic kind of stuff. So that really tied in well, especially for Bottle, because, and now I suppose I'll lead on to what Bottle is about as well. So Bottle is about this guy is Eric, and it's about his time in quarantine and self-isolation. And so the way that I want to convey this to the viewer is that we don't know whether what Eric is experiencing is real or whether it is just within his mind. So we have a little bit of a question to the viewer that gives kind of more thought-provoking and, but then relatable as well, because people that have had to stay inside a long time and how, those experiences may affect the mind, mentally. But while it's not a factual story, it's completely fictional, but things that the structure is built around is how these experiences and lots of visual metaphors as well that will really make the viewer think that if you've given the trailer a little watch, the concept trailer that I put out, I think that was in May. It's just an initial draft trailer really, but to get an idea, so we've got Eric kind of experiencing a few things, and there's a visual metaphor quite clearly in each of the shots. It doesn't really matter where I shoot this now, because of course with the theory being that, is it in Eric's mind? Is it real? I can basically go anywhere, put different scenes in, so that's really helpful in building structure for the short. So lots of content, lots of editing, but it's quite difficult obviously to, on this, I'm purely doing this all on my own. So, but I did it as a bit of a challenge really. I was like, right, let's just do this solely on your own. Not because I wanted to be like, oh look, written, produced, directed, danced, whatever, extras. I don't want to all be just this is all me. It's purely to kind of show what can you do during COVID, and can we make something that engages people and they can also relate to at the same time, but will also have doesn't have to be overly serious. It can still be thought provoking to pop out a few questions to any potential viewers when and if it's supposedly going to be released. So next May is my kind of hope to get it all tied up by then. So yeah, Scott is going to be doing the score for that as well. So really looking forward. He sent me actually tonight. Sent me a draft of his initial track for that, and I've yet to listen to it. So once I've finished here, I'm going to be taking the first listen to the potential track. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it because he's a really great guy, and there's possibly one other guy who is actually my brother-in-law, who is also another musician, and he may be writing a couple of tracks as well. Because of course, I can use probably like say 10 seconds of one track. When it comes down to the edit, it may not be the full track, which it's only going to be probably six minutes or so. So I'm not going to be able to fit in, 3 tracks, let's say, 3 whole tracks. I'll be picking and choosing the bits that I want.
I like hearing the story about like that you're taking the time and not just, sitting at home, this sucks, fucking stuck at home with COVID, but instead saying, how can I use this as an opportunity to be creative and like, can I make something even though I'm restricted by this kind of stuff? And I think that is where it's kind of funny because I do a lot of photography as well. And sometimes I'll do this where I'll restrict myself and I'll basically say, okay, I'm going to go out today and I'm going to shoot as if I'm shooting film, and I'm going to give myself 36 shots and that's it. And so they better be great shots, or I'm going to only use this particular lens, and like that kind of, and sometimes create these restrictions which force creativity on you. And
sure.
That sounds like kind of what you're doing there is you're like, okay, I'm stuck with COVID, or not that you're stuck with COVID, but I'm stuck at home because of COVID. And
sure.
I'm going to, and instead of just bitching about it, I'm going to see like, what can I create out of it, which is fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, there's not, it's not necessarily, sometimes it's difficult, it's of course been difficult for many people, and much, much worse for myself. Mm-hmm. But I think, you've got to, and now like there are more there's more guidance. So, I mean, purely the trip to Turkey was planned also kind of for early April. So I would have finished doing my 2 potential film parts, and then I was going to be heading out to Turkey. So those things were, obviously set in stone in advance. It's been partially difficult, but now, because there's more guidance, it's given me the chance. I've not been able to do exactly what I want to do, but it's given me the chance to obviously get out to Greece, to Kos, as one of the few places where travel corridors still open. At the time of speaking, I think it still is. But I may well get, on arrival home, I may get told, I've got to quarantine for 2 weeks. So then I'll have to spend that time being, well, it'll be just like kind of March again, I suppose, really. But for 2 weeks of, well, not doing nothing, but like I say, it'll force the creativity back on. So I'll probably, even if I do have to self-isolate for those 2 weeks or something when I get home, touch wood that I don't, but if I do, then I mean, I can work. I'll probably be able to bash out a load of stuff and be able to get all that. I'll probably get a lot of stuff done on my own. Sure, it might slow the process on the Mr. Stair because that may slow that one down a little, but it'll give me a chance to kind of get a bit more done on my own. So there's certainly plenty to do. I think this situation is I probably ended up doing more in some respects than I probably would have done. So I think yeah, in some ways, it's a little bit. Although it's a really difficult time, and of course, people are losing loved ones, and there's a lot of uncertainty for many people, and especially for jobs, and especially creative sectors as well. I think we're just hearing now, government have released an advert, I don't know if you've seen, that's got a lot of, got a lot of backlash that was kind of saying that, that people in the creative sector should just retrain and do another job. It really isn't that simple, and what jobs are they going to do if you need to retrain them, but if unemployment is, high as it is anyway, yeah, sure, you might be able to do that job. You may be going for kind of 1 to kind of 1,000 people for that role. The government, I don't think they necessarily live in the real world in the sense of, oh yeah, just go and retrain and do something else.
Yeah.
It really isn't that simple. But yeah, blessing in disguise, to kind of put it on a more positive spin, is that I certainly wouldn't have done as much as I've done in some ways if it wasn't for, being enforced into kind of, self-isolation because of COVID. So yeah, that's where we're at.
I think we're good. I think let's wrap it up with one last question, which is, if people want to track you down, social media or whatever, where would they find you?
Yeah, sure. So for anything relating to kind of bottle, really, plus some of my photography as well, it's basically Bamboo Creatives, which is kind of spelled without a bamboo, so like BMBOO_creatives. So that might not come across so well, but in a pre-record, you might be able to pop something just out there.
Exactly. It'll be in the notes.
For sure. Yeah, Bamboo Creatives is probably the main one, and that's on Facebook and Instagram. So yeah, people can take a little mosey of what I've been into, and in time there'll be more stuff appearing with Mr. Stair. At the minute, the website's in development, so just waiting on the director to give us a heads up, and then I might force the issue being a producer, so they might put that back onto me anyway. So
that's it, man. Kev, thanks for taking the time. I know you're kind of busy over there in Greece, so I appreciate you knocking out an hour to chat with me.
That's cool. As they say in Greece, Efristo, which is thank you. So Efristo indeed.